Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praise for Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon Prophet Muhammad, his companions, and all those who strive to follow in their footsteps. My dear viewers, brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode of Quraan Science from Huda TV. And my name is Sharif Touni, and in this episode we'll be discussing about the waters, the running waters, and how it creates foams in which these foams are not useful for man, and all the good things and the minerals from this water and the benefit stays on the land, which is a very great analogy between the truth and falsehood. And this is coming in Surah Ibrahim, in one of the verses, in the 17th verse. So this is the topic for this episode that we'll be discussing. With me now in the studio, Professor of Geology, Zaghlul Naggar. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show. I'd also like to introduce my dear brothers and guests for this episode, being here for interaction and questions to Professor Zaghlul. I'd like to introduce first Abdurrahman Ismail and Zabihullah Kareem. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the show. Okay, before we move into this topic, the mentioned topic, we'll leave you now with this holy verse and we'll return back, so stay tuned.
On water from the skies, causing the valleys to flow according to their measure. Then the rapids produce abundant foam. And of what they forge in the fire to make ornaments or utensils, foam is produced as well. Thus God compares truth to falsehood. The foam is cast away, worthless. But that which benefits mankind remains on the earth. Thus, God sets forth parables.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back. You're watching Quraan Science. I'll move now to Abdurrahman Ismail to find what he got from this holy verse. Abdurrahman, what are you getting from within this verse?
In this verse, I believe that Allah is comparing falsehood to truthfulness, and like assimilates them to water when it runs, and flushes away these sometimes insignificant and non-useful sediments and particles, and at the same time compares truthfulness to the useful metals and minerals.
So this what stays on land, and this what benefits human and stays, and the
compared
falsehood
to the insignificant
disappears and it's eliminated from
consequential sediments that the water may carry with it.
Okay, Zabihullah.
I'm totally agree with my brother that Allah is mentioning in this verse that Allah who sent down the water, and through this water causes the flow of rivers. And through flowing, it makes producing a foam which is of no use.
Mm-hmm. So you catch any scientific elements or notations about the water cycle and the benefits from water to the land?
Yeah, like we can produce hydroelectric energy from the water, and it's like
All right.
So-
Okay. Now let's move to Professor Zaghloul to find more about the meaning of this holy verse.
In the name of, sorry, in the name of Allah, our Creator, the Creator of the universe and of everything that's in it, I greet you all in our Islamic way. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace, blessings, and mercy be with you all. This verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to explain to us the difference between truth and falsehood. And truth is useful to humanity at large, while falsehood has no value. So people have to stick to the truth as much as they can to be saved in this world and in the world to come. Falsehood may appear to people sometimes that is something glory and something that looks beautiful, but in reality it has no weight, it has no value, it will be absolutely worthless. And the verse says, أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. It is Allah who sends down rain from the sky. And look at the beauty of this expression, because nobody else can send rain from the sky other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is quoted to have said, after giving Fajr prayer on the day of Al-Hudaybiyah, when the Muslims were returning back from Mecca to Medina, the rain came down and the Muslims woke up to do Fajr prayer. And of course the Muslims were a little bit upset by the many favors the Prophet has given to the unbelievers, you see, because he knew through the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is the best way of dealing with them. And he said, إِنَّهُ الْفَتْحِ. It is the victory, it's the real victory. And say, what victory in it, you see? And of course he tried to cheer them up a little bit, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So after he finished the prayer, he said, أَتَدْرُونَ مَاذَا قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ. Do you know what Allah said? They said, Allah wa Rasuluhu a'lam. Then he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ أَصْبَحَ مِنْ عِبَادِي مُؤْمِنٌ وَكَافِرٌ. Allah said, this morning some of my worshippers or some of my creation are true believers and others are unbelievers. And then the companion said, who are the mu'mins and who are the kafirs? He said, من قال أمطرنا بنوء كذا أو نوء كذا فقد كفر. ومن قال أمطرنا برحمة من الله وفضل فقد آمن. Those who would say we were rained by storm so and so, he lost belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who said we were rained by the great mercy of Allah, the great bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the true believer. And really today we know that no man on earth can cause a drop of rain to come down. So it is Allah who sends down rain. And he said, أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. He did not from as-samawat, from the sky, not from the skies. Because we know that the clouds cannot exceed the limit of the troposphere. Clouds are mostly in the troposphere, which is a distance of 8 to 18 kilometers from sea level. So أنزل من السماء ماء فسالت أودية بقدرها. The valleys did flow with water, each according to its own dimension. And this is again a scientific notion, because we know that the width of a valley and the length of the valley and the degree of inclination of the valley bottom can accommodate the amount of water in exact proportion to these dimensions. فسالت أودية بقدرها. The valleys did flow according to the measures of each one of them. And Allah is saying that in this flow or flowage of the water in the valley, we get the fragmentation of the rock and the disintegration of the rock and the separation of the different minerals. Heavy minerals will go down to the bottom and light minerals will float on the surface. And usually it's the dense minerals that have great value. And especially when these minerals are found, or these elements are found in traces, you see, in the rocks. So this process of running water can concentrate these traces into a valuable deposit. We call them placer deposits. So when you get a stream running in a desert, this flow disintegrates the rocks. And the flow itself can discriminate between whatever is light and whatever is heavy. The heavy matter is deposited gradually, one after the other, and the light minerals flow. And this usually in their flowage can catch some air bubbles, a thin film of water around a big amount or a small amount of air. And these air bubbles have no value. They usually catch some straw, catch some light clay minerals, of no value, really.
Yes.
And sooner or later, this air bubble will blast and will come to nothingness. Absolutely no value. But the value is in what is at the bottom. And the verse says, this is exactly the same process of smelting minerals. When you start to smelting an ore, gold ore or silver ore or copper ore, usually we use some chemical compounds to take the traces of impurities and float at the surface and constitute similar air bubbles, you see,
yes,
containing the impurities in the gold or impurities in the silver or in the copper. We use coal, charcoal, we use some lime, and we smelt these minerals. And of course, these compounds, these chemical compounds, can catch the impurities and flow at the surface in exactly the same parallel of these air bubbles flowing at the surface of a flowing river or a flowing channel.
So human is using the same process of the difference in density and the
yes,
process of separation of these elements.
Oh yes, because we usually imitate what's in nature. And scientists would try to copy what's in nature.
What's in nature, yes.
So Allah is saying that anything of value settles down, and anything of no value floats at the surface. And He's giving the parallel or the parable of truthfulness and falsehood. Falsehood usually try to look at the surface and look a little bit much greater than its real value. This air bubble could be actually looks beautiful, but once it blasts, it's absolutely nothing.
It's nothing.
And Allah is showing humanity that concentrate on the truthfulness and negate and left aside anything of the falsehood. Whatever glorified may look, whatever beautiful it may look, it has no value at all.
One of the things indicated also, as you mentioned, it's the fragmentation of rock.
Yes.
So this is this a different story from the separation of elements, or is it also
exactly
bringing the good elements of the rocks and removing the rest?
You see, any rock is composed of several minerals, and most of the valuable minerals are found as traces. Take gold, for example. Gold is found as traces, and unless we have these processes, which are natural processes of fragmentation and then separation according to the densities, the different densities of the minerals, you see, you can never get concentrations or high concentrations. And that's why placer deposits are really deposits that contain the most valuable minerals, the most valuable precious stones, because they are naturally concentrated by the process of gradual separation and settling at the bottom of the valley. And these placer deposits are in some cases more valuable than the ore deposit itself. Yes. That's found in probably millions of tons, but traces that cannot be useful to man. Mm-hmm. So you can find the gold in a quartz vein, 2 pennyweight per ton, 3 pennyweight per ton, of no value. But once this is fragmented and carried out by flowing streams, they are concentrated into much more valuable deposits.
Okay, thank you very much for this input, Dr. Zaghloul. Now, before moving into further questions about this topic of the separation of the good and the bad, or the truth and the beautiful analogy of the truth and the falsehood, we'll move now for a short break and return back, so stay tuned.
Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. So is it logical to say all plastic surgeries are lawful in Islam to bring or to regain beauty? It is very misleading questions. Need a very accurate and firm answers. Let us set up the rules and principles to cover all plastic surgeries in Islamic law. How Islam does legalize niqab or veil factor in our modern life. Is it fair to suggest that it is more cultural than it is Islamic? I would rather to answer these questions by just suggesting very shocking fact about niqab. Are you ready for that? How Islam does legalize polygamy, when Islam always says that respect natural instinct and natural feelings, and knowing that not a single woman does accept anyone to share her in her kingdom. All what you have said is true. But is there any difference between your natural instinct and your natural desires? Or maybe between your interest or what you wish to have? Or maybe your interest and other interest? Is it true that anything came after the Prophet ﷺ regarding this deen to be considered as a bid'ah, innovation? It's neither this nor that. It seems very well complicated and confusing to many Muslims, especially when it comes to the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, وَكُلَّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ, and Sayyidina Umar saying, نِعْمَةُ الْبِدْعَةُ هَذِهِ. Let us set up the very comprehensive definition of bid'ah according to Islamic law.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. You're watching Quraan Science. And now let's move to Zabihullah for his questions regarding this topic of the separation of the truth and the falsehood in the scientific notation of having the foam carrying all the useless minerals out of the water and leaving the benefit to human. So Zabihullah, what questions do you have?
Yeah, my question is that this foam have no time. It's like disappear very, very soon. And in the same time, we can see that a human can take very take advantage of the water and the minerals that have inside. So, Professor, my question is, what's inside this water more that is very healthy for the human to take it from?
You see, the water itself is essential for life.
Yeah.
So the verse does not minimize the value of water. They're speaking about the falsehood of these foam bubbles that are carried by the water, you see. They may look beautiful, but they have no value. They may look large and enormous and inflated, but they have no value. It does not reflect on the water itself, because the water is essential for life.
Okay, as you mentioned before that the Allah who sends the rain and that causing inflow of rivers, but in this time we hear in sometimes artificial raining. It's like saying that people in causing the raining.
Yes, they call this artificial rain. They go, if they have a cloud, and they go trying to inoculate this cloud by some chemical compounds that can help the condensation of water. And they assume that they can allow rain to fall down. But we have an experiment that was carried out one of the Gulf countries, you see, actually in Kuwait. The Americans came and they tried to convince the Kuwaitis to make them artificial rain. And they said, we can change Kuwait into a green land by this artificial rain. And they said, what can you do? You just inoculate the clouds as they come in winter, and the rain will come down. They came and inoculated the clouds, and it rained in UAE, United Arab Emirates. So the Kuwaitis paid the money, and the rain went to the United Arab Emirates, you see. So nobody can control where rain can come down except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of this, the Prophet said, وَمَا يَدْرِي أَحَدٌ مَتَى يَنْزِلُ الْمَطَرُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Nobody can know where this rain can come down. It's only Allah that knows where rain can come down. And as we mentioned in the previous episode, the amount of water that is evaporated from the earth is constant, 380,000 cubic kilometers per year. And it goes out from earth and comes back to earth, drop by drop, but with a new distribution. Allah redistributes it according to His own will, His own judgment, His own knowledge, His own justice. But of course, nobody can control this. And believe it or not, although we know these days how rain is formed, but we cannot control the process at all. where it will rain, with what amount it will rain, you see, when it will rain. All this is beyond the limits of man. And that's why the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, nobody would know when rain will come other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And is the attempt wrong? Is it a wrong
beg pardon?
attempt? Is it a wrong attempt to try to make artificial rain?
Wallahi, I'm not saying it's a wrong attempt, but it's too much of a human conceit, actually.
Yes.
The Prophet told us, do the rain prayer. When you have rain stopping from coming to you, just salatul istisqa.
Yes.
And ask for the rain from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the rain is part of the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it can only be asked from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So I think since this is the way, I think the scientific experiments would not
as I said,
reach a precise way of...
as I said, you see, it's very costly, first of all, very expensive, and nobody can control where it's going to rain. Unless you are dealing with a vast country like USA, for example, or Russia, or China, something like that. Wherever it will come down, it can be of use, you see. But when you are in a small country like Kuwait or Qatar, you cannot do that.
Yes.
It will be too much of a human conceit, actually.
Okay. Zabihullah, any further questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, moving to Abdurrahman.
I wonder, in this verse, Allah talked only about the water that comes from the sky. I mean, the rain, which comes from clouds.
Yes.
Why didn't this verse mention the water that gushes from springs? I mean, they can also include bubbles and minerals and everything.
You mean water coming from the ground,
Yes.
groundwater?
Mm.
Well, because you see, this groundwater originally came from rain. You see, it's part of the rain. Because once the rain falls down on a highly porous rock, you see, it penetrates the spores and, of course, becomes stored in the ground. So if it mentioned the water flowing on the surface, that's what you see. But if the groundwater gushes out from the ground, forms a spring, it will also can form foam. But being of the same origin, there is no need to repeat it, particularly as the verse comes in giving a parable, giving an example, you see. Allah is saying that the difference between truthfulness and falsehood is the difference between valuable minerals that are deposited at the bottom of a running stream and these gas bubbles that are distributed at the surface. Whatever beautiful they may appear, they have no value and they are absolutely worthless.
But if we compare the number of verses that deal with rainwater and spring water, we will note that the verses dealing with rainwater is more.
Definitely.
Does this mean that the origin is rainwater, or
no? The origin is rainwater. Groundwater is part of the rain that comes down, and the Quran spells that out beautifully. 14 centuries ago, while scientists worried really for centuries, where did this groundwater come from? To the extent that many Westerners believed that it's seepage from the sea, literal seepage from the sea. The Quran says, وَمَا أَنْتُمْ لَهُ بِخَازِنِينَ, you see, and you are not the ones who store it. You see, so really the groundwater is part of the rain, and the original water gushed out from within the earth, from the zone of weakness, and it came up as highly heated vapors. Allah has caused the lower part of the atmosphere to cool gradually upwardly. It condensed, came down as rain, ran on the surface, accumulated in depressed areas as seas and oceans and lakes and rivers and the like. And then Allah has circulated that water in what we call the water cycle around the earth. So the sun evaporates the water, it goes to sky, condenses, comes down as rain. So the original process is rain. Anything else comes secondary from the original source, which is the rainwater.
Okay, do we have a certain estimation of how groundwater is distributed on Earth?
You see, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every country, every piece of land is composed of certain layers of rocks. Some of these layers are porous and permeable. some are highly impervious. So if rain comes on an outcrop of a porous bed, a porous sequence, it will infiltrate and become stored. It will go with the dip of the ground, of the bed itself, becomes stored and actually confined in what we call an aquifer, a stored amount of water. Aqua is water in Latin.
It's like a basin. Like a basin.
Like a basin or something like that. But of course, you see, the water is not like a lake. It's as thin films within the grains of the rock. You see, so it's stored there to the time when people need it, and Allah knows in His knowledge that time will come when people will flourish in that area and they will need water. Like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has no rivers. But during the previous rainy periods, Allah has stored at least 15 different aquifers for Saudi Arabia. You get zones of porous rocks, impervious, porous, impervious, porous, impervious. And if you go from west to east, you'll find many aquifers. And actually the Saudis are mainly living on these aquifers, although they are trying, of course, to use desalination and distillation of the seawater. But they have been living for centuries on the groundwater. So the groundwater is originally from rain. And that's why Allah did not repeat the parable for water gushing out as springs from within the ground, because it's originally coming from rain.
So originally, Zamzam is coming from rain.
Zamzam is a miracle by itself. Zamzam is coming from rain as well.
Yes.
But you see, people who know the structure of the rocks on top of which the Kaaba is built, these are highly metamorphosed rocks. And when you get metamorphism, you get partial melting of the minerals. And these partially melted minerals infill the pores.
Yes.
So you find absolutely massive rocks with no porosity, no permeability. And that's why if we tell people that we have a well that gushed out in Mecca and started flowing for 4,000 years within such type of rocks, nobody can believe this. 4,000 years flowing from highly impervious and highly impermeable rocks is a miracle by itself. And unless the tunnels around the Kaaba have been cut down, people realize that there are thin cracks along which water having the similar qualities as the Zamzam water came out into these tunnels. So they note that these cracks are something unique. Where did they come from? And the Prophet explained this, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said it's when Hajar, may Allah be pleased with her, were left with her little baby in this area where there was no people, no plantation, nothing, no source of living whatsoever. And Ibrahim alayhi salam left a bag of water for them and a small bag of dates. And she ran after him. Oh Ibrahim, to whom are you leaving us? He wouldn't answer. To whom are you leaving us? He wouldn't answer. Then by her intuition that her husband is one of the mightiest messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she asked, Allahu amaraka bihada, did Allah order you to do that? Then he turned his face and said yes. And with a genuine belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she said, إِذَنْ لَن يُضَيِّعَنَا. If Allah has instructed you to do so, He will never leave us to be lost. Immediately Allah sent Jibreel alayhi salam, Archangel Jibreel. He struck this solid rock by his wing or his end, as the Prophet said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and water gushed out. And he said, رحم الله أم إسماعيل لولا أنها زمتها لكانت عينا. May Allah have mercy on Ismail, because the mother of Ismail, unless she encircled it, it would have been a lake. Yes. And this is a miracle that cannot be explained in terms of normal acquired sciences.
That was very informative. Thank you very much, Professor Zaghlul Naggar, for being here with us. It was a pleasure to have you. My dear guests, Abdurrahman, Ismail, and Zabihullah, thank you very much for being here with us.